know that that's a part of every entrepreneur's
Dealing with
journey, dealing with
stress.
stress, right? And you find your different coping mechanisms, whether it's alcohol, whether it's smoking, whether it's
Ooh.
binge eating, Netflix, whatever it is. But so many people find those crutches, those coping mechanisms. So was that yours?
It was also at that time, interestingly, is that I was starting my business and I was going through a divorce at the same
Mm,
time. So
wow.
you have this great thing that you're starting and you're losing this great person in your life.
All right, we're out. Let's bring her in.
There she is. Hey.
Hey!
Thank you for joining us today, Miss April. So let's start off with where are you from? Where are you and what do you do?
So let me honor where I'm really from right now because I always say I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and that is a lie. I am from Fairfield, Alabama. You've never heard of it. I know. But
Mm.
but it is the home to my alma mater, my HBCU, Miles College. So it's a small town right outside of Birmingham, but I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I have a small homeschool, micro school community for middle school age African American children.
Nice. Love that. Love
Mm,
that.
mm. Um, this is one of those random questions I said might
Right,
come up
right off the bat.
right off the bat,
I
right?
told you it will happen.
Random question, but before the podcast, we were talking about salmon pizza, and I just want to make sure
That is
we
right. We
cover
we need to
this.
go back to that.
I just want to make sure we get this phenomena down before we dive deep into self care because food is our self care.
Mhm.
All right, so salmon pizza. Can you please educate folks who haven't had the pleasure?
So there's this place here in Atlanta, and I don't even know if it's natural, but it's called Slim and Husky. So if you're in Atlanta and you're listening to me, check it out. There's salmon pizza, and it has a white cheese sauce on it. It's not the red sauce on it, so it's not heavy. And Slim and Huskies is really delicious. And if you're there, get a cinnamon roll. They're really good also. So try it.
Cinnamon roll?
It's They have cinnamon rolls there too, and their cinnamon rolls are just they're everything. They're everything that's delicious.
So you may not know this about me, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in an episode before, but cinnamon rolls is up in my top 3 foods, to enjoy in life.
So when you come to the A, check it out.
Oh, and we have a trip planned to the A at some point this year. So you
Nice.
best believe look, I'm about to add Slim and Huskies to
Write
my
it down.
Yelp thing right
Go
now.
ahead and write it down.
Now it's not black owned, and I typically do not promote any business that's not black owned. That's just my thing. But it's not black owned, but there are some dope black owned restaurants here as well. So when you're coming in town, check in with me and I'll give you a list of all the great black owned restaurants you've got to try.
Oh, that's what we're gonna do. That another thing that's on our list is to visit that the new Black Wall Street shopping center out there in the A
Mhm.
too. So definitely go tap in. But the topic of self care, right? And if we started off light for us, food is definitely a part of that self care. But can you talk a little bit about how you stumbled upon focusing on self care for entrepreneurs? Was it a point in your entrepreneurship journey and setting up this homeschool network where you weren't taking care of yourself and you saw those signs and you were like, okay, I need to switch up? Like what kind of led you to this path?
There are a lot of ways I could answer that. I'll go to the most immediate. In 2020 is when I started the business itself. At the first, so a year into it, I'm still trying to find my way inside of the business. And then in 2021, go to the hospital. It looks like I'm having symptoms of a stroke, but it's not a stroke. It is my blood pressure is up so high. But in the process of beginning the business, I've always been a smoker on and off ever since I was probably in high school. But I had starting the business, I just started to smoke more and more. And I'm being completely transparent here. I was a black and mild smoker. So while I'm getting the business started, I'm sitting there working at the table. I am smoking, smoking, smoking. And before I knew it, my blood pressure was up. I was killing myself. And at that moment is when I started to say, I've got to do something different. So I started, my diet shifted, my workout routine shifted, my life had to shift because if I wanted to live to see this business that I knew was going to transform my community, I had to do something different.
Mhm. Yeah, and
That's good.
you talked about first of all, wow.
Right.
That
Right.
especially you getting to that point and then going through a whole lifestyle, shift and makeover. That's very, very commendable. Um, but you talked about the like was it the kind of the stress of the entrepreneurship journey that was leading you to like smoking more? Like I'm trying to guys, I know that that's a part of every entrepreneur's
Dealing with
journey, dealing
stress.
with stress, right? And you find your different coping mechanisms, whether it's alcohol, whether it's smoking, whether it's
Ooh.
binge eating, Netflix, whatever it is, but so many people find those crutches, those coping mechanisms. So was that yours?
It was also at that time, interestingly, is that I was starting my business and I was going through a divorce at the same
Mm,
time. So
wow.
it was, you have this great thing that you're starting and you're losing this great person in your life. And she was an amazing person, but
Mm,
it just wasn't working. And so it was the stress of going through the divorce. It was the stress of starting this business. It was, I was a teacher. There is comfort in being a teacher. You know, you're going to have a job. You
Mm.
know, you always know that you will have a job as a teacher. So knowing that I was about to shift and I was about to lose that security was driving me bananas. So it was compounded by a lot of things, but I was I almost was grateful that that it happened the way that it did because I immediately woke up. I came home that day. When I came in from the hospital, I broke every black and mile. I
mm.
tried one more time. I'm gonna tell you, it was as if God took the taste from me.
Mm.
Wow. Wow.
So
Wow.
that's yeah, it was all of those things combined.
Yeah. Thank you for the nuggets. And we
Mhm.
have three people watching live. We appreciate y'all. If y'all have any questions about self-care, later on we'll get into about curriculum and homeschooling. Feel free to put those questions or comments inside of the Facebook comments or the YouTube comments, and we'll be able to pull you up. So I want to get into some tangible tips for folks because I know there's other people out there who are dealing with stress. There's other entrepreneurs that are dealing with stress, dealing with maybe some mental health issues as well. Can you talk maybe some a tangible tip that you have that either work for you or that you just really try to champion within your work on how folks can deal with their own mental health or deal with their stress of being ambitious, of having those
Yeah.
big dreams, of wanting the dream or the hustle to work, but it comes with that some stress. So can you have some tips for folks?
One of the things I want to say is that that word hustle has such a negative connotation. We think that it doesn't, but it really does because the hustle mentality is you team never sleep. You know, that mentality. That's really not healthy for us and we need to make sure that when we're saying hustle that we're also encouraging people inside of the hustle to love yourself, be kind to yourself, be gracious to yourself inside of your hustle. Hustle doesn't mean lose yourself. So I want to make sure that I emphasize that. But tangible things I think that we need to do is that we need to start making no a sentence.
Mm,
Mm.
Make no a sentence in your life, and you don't have to explain yourself to other people when you say no to them. When you need to honor yourself and love on yourself for a minute and spend time with you don't have to justify that to anyone. The answer is no today. I'm not doing that. So learn to say no. Also, know when your cutoff is. So for me, each night, I stop working at 10. It doesn't matter. I every now and then I may stretch a little bit over that, but my creativity is lost by 10 p.m. every night. And I
mm.
know that about myself.
Gone.
It just shuts off, you know. So I honor that. And your time, somebody else may work best late at night.
Mm.
And then so do whatever works for you, and you don't have to justify that to anyone. Do really what works for you. I shut down at 10 o'clock every night. I remember to another thing is that I make sure that others honor my time.
Mm,
So that means that if I say that I'm working for 8 hours today, I'm working for 8 hours that day, and you can't call me and have a conversation. Girl, I'm going to have to call you back. I'm working right now.
Mm,
I had to get my friends in the mindset. What you doing? I'm working. That's what I'm doing. And I don't care that I'm sitting at home working. I'm working. So what you need, make it real quick, and we got to get off this line. So make other people honor your time, and then never forget to treat yourself.
mm,
Treat
mm,
yourself. You
mm,
know, you're gonna get broke inside of this hustle. I'm gonna here to tell you. There's gonna be some days where you're not gonna have those means, especially when you transition out of the full time and you're doing this full time. You may have a moment where your money isn't what it used to be. I don't care how little you have. Treat yourself. Don't
mm.
ever pay yourself first. You know,
Yeah.
that's something inside of entrepreneurship. Don't forget to pay yourself. Give
mhm.
Mhm.
yourself that. So I think those things have really worked for me, and I hope that that blesses somebody else.
Oh yeah. I already know the queen's over here. Like, pay yourself, Devon.
Look, especially I love what you said at the beginning, about the, like, the hustle mentality, because I think it is so preached, right? That team no sleep. If you're sleeping, you're slacking type of thing. And I'm such a big proponent that it has to be a part of your hustle. Otherwise, you are going to burn yourself out. And I think it's, very similar to what we talked about, I think last week, when, like, if you think about a college student and you've got like a midterm the next day, your natural inclination might be to pull an all-nighter to study without realizing that you are literally decreasing your brain's ability to recall all of the things you just studied, right? It's the same thing with the hustle mentality. You can think like, oh, I'm going to work for 4 more hours. I'm going to sacrifice my sleep and I'm going to be more productive. Those 4 hours could probably be 2 hours the next day after a good night's sleep, right? So
Right,
that's more productive because you're going to be able to do more in that 4 hour period than you would with no sleep. So I think like it's just a backwards mentality that I know I love that you preach it. I preach myself too,
Mm,
and especially to the king, make sure that we get good sleep. But I also love what you said about like you have to honor yourself. So I
mhm,
think even in our dynamic as a couple, he is the hustler, right? He lives to just work. If he's not working, he's like, I'm doing something wrong, right? That's
right,
not me. And I've had to come to terms with that in like the last couple months of like, okay, I'm going to bed. Yes, he's still there working on his laptop, but I'm going to bed. Or I'm going to sit here and I'm going to watch this episode of TV and not work because that's what I need to do to decompress and, make sure that I get a good night's sleep and I'm fresh for the next day. And at first that there was a little bit of guilt there, like, dang, I need to be hustling too. Like he's there, I need to be working. But I just at some point I came to the realization that we are different people
mhm,
and that
right,
his grind will tear me apart and have me like dead,
mhm,
so I think that that was not dead, but like energy wise.
mhm,
Thank you. No, not dead. But yeah, I just had to come to terms with that. And I'm now like I can do that with less guilt now of like, this is what I need to do today. I'm taking a self-care day. You work, that's what you need to do today. And we can come together at the end of the day and, debrief about how our days went.
right. Because our hustles look different. Everybody's hustle looks different.
Yes.
So and that's and I think that that's so important that you recognize it so that you can give yourself the grace and be kind to yourself so that you don't feel bad. Uh, other friends that may be entrepreneurs and so forth, they look, girl, you're always working, but I actually love to work,
yeah.
especially when your work is it's something that you're passionate about and it's not just something that you're doing. I'm really, really passionate about teaching children and bettering our community through education. And so I can do this all day. When I say I can do this all day, I can do it all day.
Love Look, so speaking of the passion, speaking of the love, 'cause I think that's something that I think me and you share, April, is that passion of education.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
selfishly, whenever we call out for guests, there's always a little bit of selfishness in there, like, ooh, okay, I like what April doing
Look,
over
I saw
there.
some of these questions, I was like, "Oh,
Oh, let
he
me get April on so I can learn a little bit. Hold up.
he's in here to learn all he can."
Yeah, I was like, hold up, she popping out there. So I wanna pivot a little bit to your passion work, right? Within the past network. Um, I know on your website you talk about culturally relevant pedagogy or culturally relevant content, right? Can you talk a little bit for educators or parents that may be listening and aren't aware of what that means? What is culturally relevant pedagogy or content, and why is that important for our young ones or even ourselves to take into consideration when we're learning something?
So I want us to break the narrative. We're breaking some things today. Some people think, oh, if I put a book with an African American in it in front of them, then that's culturally relevant. And if I talk to them about these African Americans that have done these great things, and that makes it culturally relevant. But our culture is not just our race. Um, our culture is attached to so much more than that. But for the sake of this moment, we'll talk about it from a racial standpoint, though, because that is the moment of reckoning that we're in right now, and
Mm.
that's so significant right now. For me, culturally relevant mathematics is talking about financial literacy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, it's talking about compound interest. It's talking about payday loans because those sit in our communities and hurt our communities in so many ways. It's talking about how the lottery is a tax on the poor.
Mm.
It's we're talking about entrepreneurship. When we're talking about math, we're talking about entrepreneurship. When I teach math, it's percentages and how do you know what's going to be the best, what's the best deal when you see those deals in the store, because that's what we see when we go in the store. That's making it relevant to what we're actually going to see. When we're talking about history, we talk about the geography as it relates to the movement of Africans in America.
Mhm.
We don't talk about it just New York is there. How does that relate to Africans in America? What was the Great Migration? What was that? We talk about that movement of people, and now the return migration to the South that we're seeing right now. So we talk about geography in those terms, and I have my notes here because I want to make sure when we talk about language,
Mhm.
appreciate inside of a traditional classroom, a child says ain't, finna, kinda, gonna. We want to correct them. Culturally relevant says, I appreciate that part of your culture.
Mm.
I'm going to teach you how to use language in a way that appeases some others, but
Mm.
I want to teach you to stop caring about the white gaze.
Mm.
Thank you for tuning in to the True Health Forever podcast. We hope you learned something valuable that you can take and implement into your life. Now, we've all heard that sharing is caring, and this podcast is no exception. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, a family member, a coworker, a stranger walking down the street, anybody who you think can level up from this message. As always, we appreciate your support, and we'll talk to you next week. Be well.